of anger, aggression, ADD, and anxiety in a 5-year-old boy. This kid was, this is kind of what we talked about. So this kid was developing a lot of aggressive behavior. He has been, with all the unrest in the world, he's not going to school anymore. It was taking a toll on all of us, but definitely on kids. They've had like a disruption to their routine, and like a lot of behavior has been coming up of like acting out and things like that. So he's a 5-year-old. He's addicted to video games. If he's not at school, he's just playing his video games, bullying and antagonizing his younger brother, who's 3 years old. He had difficulty focusing in school. He was always talking or this and that, but he actually really loved school. I think it was because he loved his teacher so much. And so not having that anymore also kind of created some problems for him. Obsessed with violence. Everything you pick up, it becomes a gun. He's shooting at his brother, he's shooting at his mom. You know how sometimes boys play like that, but everything became about, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to fight you, or it was just too much. And like, his mom would be like, all right, knock it off. And he wouldn't stop. He was disrespecting his mother and just not listening and being very defiant and things like that. There was also a negative self-talk picture. He was very down on himself. He was saying things like, oh, I'm so bad, or nobody loves me, or you only love my younger brother, you don't love me, like nobody's gonna marry me. I don't even know where a 5-year-old comes up with this stuff. I'm a coward. I don't even know where he was picking up these words. And his mom was like, I don't know where he's picking up these words. I don't know anybody who's talking to him like that or where he's getting this. But he also really had his like athletic talents. He was a talented BMX biker and he loved it. He's 5 years old. That's very young to be in that sport. But he's been doing it as soon as, she says that from a young age, he's just loved the bike and doing tricks and things like that. And again, with the disruption in the world, this was an outlet he wasn't having as much anymore either. So I feel like there was just a lot of things at play that just kind of made his behavior and his presentation, his anxiety just coming out in a lot of different ways. Also, I included, so he is very healthy young boy, actually. He doesn't have any health issues that the mother could think of, no gut issues, no getting sick often. Like he was really, really healthy. And you could look at him and you could see, because he's got this beautiful, long, thick hair, and he loves superheroes like Jason Momoa. Aquaman is like his favorite. That's his idol. So, you think, oh, this kid is healthy, but when they're having these dysregulated behaviors or coming out and saying things negatively about themselves and things like that, we know that there's some imbalance that we need to work on. So you can go ahead to the next slide, I think, Amita. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So one of the big things was this sibling rivalry between the two of them, and the younger brother was actually very sick from a young age. He was going to hospitals a lot, and so he was taking a lot of the energy and time of the parents, and I think there was a lot of resentment building up around that too. And so he was feeling like none of the attention was on him. And then the younger brother, who is also like a client of mine, actually, that's who I was helping first, did really beautiful on homeopathy. And he has been very, very healthy for 2 years, like no hospital visits, anything like that. But it also made me think that maybe some of these aspects of the inherited health were coming into this picture too. So this is what we did. Homeopathically, to give you a little background on homeopathy is the use of ultra dilute substances in nature to elicit a response. So it's all about eliciting a healing response in the body, and the body takes care of the rest. So it's all based on the vital force, which is, our innate intelligence and ability to heal ourselves. So I can go on and on about that, but just to give you a little snippet of what homeopathy is. And I love using it because it is by far the most holistic approach to medicine that there is, because you're looking at every aspect of the person. It's not just one thing. You're looking at the mind, the body, the emotions, and how they all connect to each other. So anyway, going back to the case. So with the constant fighting and things like that, let me see. Okay, so video games, like I said, his mom is trying to limit it as much as possible, but she has to go to work. Him and his younger brother at his grandmother's house, and then that's just an easy way to keep them busy and this and that. So like parents want to do things a certain way, but then, you know, life happens and you can't always do things the way you want. But a lot of his presentation of being very destructive or this negative self-talk on himself and things like that, I gave a remedy called tuberculinum. And because, especially with a lot of the slapping the self, let's go back real quick before we go here.
Okay. No worries.
So a lot of the slapping the self and hitting the self and all of that made me kind of think of this remedy. This is like a kind of common presentation. A lot of these kids actually are born with some type of issue or defect or something like that, some abnormality. And this was not the case for him, but it's okay because he was fitting a lot of other things and it like clears out the miasm. So the miasm is just an antiquated homeopathic term for like epigenetics, what we call now, like the inherited gene like inheritance. So, you know, we're learning that things can be activated or inactivated based on environmental triggers. We're learning that stressors that our grandparents had could have been passed down to us. Like the science is actually really interesting in this area around intergenerational trauma and epigenetics. But anyway, homeopaths like of 200 years ago, which is when this medicine was created, we're already like working on this level. So we gave that remedy, and what happened was there was a little bit of movement in the case. And this case is actually still in progress, but I really wanted to share it with y'all because it was just such an interesting way to see the healing journey. But anyway, so there was a little bit of movement in the case. She said he calmed down just a little bit. He wasn't slapping himself as much, but there was still a lot of like negative self-talk and saying these things about himself and just like, oh, just leave me by the ocean, just leave me there. You don't even care for me and all of this stuff. And I was like, okay, we need to keep working on this. And then the other thing that happened was, what did happen after this? He started becoming very clingy to her. He couldn't be away. He was having a lot of separation anxiety, and she was saying it was presenting as like she would just go leave the room for 1 second. He would be screaming. Like if he was sleeping and she would get up and go, he was screaming and crying. And she'd be like, what's wrong? He'd be like, oh, I thought you died. And this was where his mind was going. And like, there was a lot of theme around death coming up, which this has actually been a theme coming up a lot for a lot of the kids that I see. And, you know, the parents telling me like, oh, my kid is asking about death a lot. I might've talked about this last time, but anyway, it's been a theme, but this was getting a little bit too much because she said that she was going to put gas in the car or something like that. And both her kids were sleeping, and she went to put the gas, she went inside to pay. And then she comes back and both the kids are crying and screaming. And she's like, what happened? What's wrong? And then the older one, we're calling him Marco. That's not his name. He was like, Mom, I told him that you died. I thought you died. And so this was just coming up again and again. She couldn't go anywhere without him immediately thinking she died. And so that was a very like, important indicator for me on how we were like moving through the case. So now he's not being so, you know, mean to her and violent and this and that. Now he's become too clingy, but this is not what I was going for either. Like, I don't want that either. So there was some balance we had to find. And so I feel like I should have given a little bit more background information on how I take these cases because I'm working remotely right now. And it's really important to be able to have the person in front of you and observe them. So much of this medicine is an observation and just little mannerisms and things like that. You get so much information. And through the phone and stuff, I'm getting, I'm getting everything through the mother's lens, which is a little bit biased. And so I didn't have that going for me, but sometimes I'll have parents send me like a little video or a little snippet or something like that, just for me to get like a feel for the child, can be really helpful. But even without that, we were able to really actually get a really nice picture of the remedy. And the mom, she's been working with me, so she's trained. She knows, she knows what questions I'm going to ask. She knows what I'm looking for and things like that. So I just wanted to add that observational skill is very critical in like little details. So I might mention things and people are like, I don't even understand why this is important, but it's so important to us as homeopaths. Okay, so I was asking more questions about his behavior changes, like when did it start, what was going on at the time, and so on. And then I found out that his parents actually separated a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago, which is around the time that he started developing the scratching himself, pulling his hair and hitting self thing. And, and this is common when kids will start acting out or internalizing things when there's a big transition or change in their life. And separation of parents is definitely a big one. The birth of the younger sibling was also a stressor for him. And I'll call it a stressor because anything that puts pressure on the vital force, again, like I said, the innate ability to adapt and be resilient, is a stressor. So when you have many different stressors coming at you, or maybe it's even just one for a long period of time, it can eventually shift the vital force out of alignment. And you're no longer as adaptable or resilient. And this can present as gut issues, as anxiety. You can develop muscle pain, autoimmune, whatever disease, because your vital force is no longer at ease. So you're developing disease. So the more out of alignment it gets, the more severe it becomes. So my job is to identify and address this. And then, like I said, the body does the rest. And so, okay, we gave that tuberculinum. I didn't mention this, but there was like grinding at night and irritable, destructive, don't want to be touched and looked at. Gave that, and then decrease in self-hitting. Still some incidents, and then it acted for a little while, and then we kind of knew it was time to give another remedy. So she mentioned that he was starting to have a lot of fears in the house, fears of the dark. He felt he was hearing sounds in the house. She also mentioned he used to have night terrors, which lasted up until age 3, where he was just waking up screaming at night. And then the clinginess, like we talked about. So based on that information, along with some other factors, we gave stramonium was a remedy. And one of my teachers, Paul Herskew, actually wrote an entire book on this remedy, stramonium. So if you're interested, it's just a fascinating medicine because you're matching the presentation to the remedy, and this can change. So you're following them in that. And a lot of homeopaths practice different. All my mentors, I have mentors all over the world, and they all practice homeopathy differently, but there's still some like very core tenets to like classical Hahnemannian homeopathy, which I am more drawn to, but it's about matching the remedy to the person. And we're not treating an illness or disease. Like this child never received a diagnosis. He was not on any medications. It was just on his symptoms that we were able to formulate this plan. So anyway, so in kids, often there's not so many layers, like they're very open. This is why I love working with kids. They respond so well and so quickly. They don't have all these complex layers of trauma and all of this life stuff that's built up. And we call it like an onion, like you're peeling the onion with each remedy. You're getting closer and closer. So with this one, there was a few layers to it. So it's very clear to a skilled practitioner when a remedy's done its job and it's time to move on to the next layer. So now we've moved on from addressing the inherited aspects to addressing early childhood. So the night terrors and things like that, we were addressing things in his early development. And then after this remedy, I was keeping in touch. I keep a very close eye with my clients. And I don't know if I actually saw that much movement. I didn't see the shift that I was really looking for. And it had been maybe 6 to 7 weeks since we started working together, and I'm really impatient and I want to see a more marked shift by a certain time. So I told her, let's just reassess the case, because I feel like we're missing something. Like, we're getting some change here, some change there, and then now he's becoming clingy. And this is not, we're not getting the whole picture somehow. So let's reassess the case. And so as she was sharing with me, I received like an intuitive hit, like, oh. And then, she was telling me, oh, we have a dentist appointment coming up, and he's just terrified of the dentist. He develops cavities really easily, which is a huge keynote of this remedy. And I mean, I can't believe I didn't ask about dental history before, because I always get so much information when I ask about dental history. There's so much there. She also noted there was some early like masturbation or things like that, which can be very normal, but it's giving me a lot of information, especially for this remedy picture. The waking up terrified and screaming if mom is gone at night, and it's a very indignant remedy, the one that I gave. It's like very sensitive to injustices. So whenever his mom would be giving his younger brother attention or something like that, he felt that was an injustice to him. And so the remedy I gave was Staphysagria, and this remedy had beautiful resonance. This really is the one where you could see the shift. So like I said, we're still in the middle of the case, but I wanted to share it because you can follow the unwinding process of healing. And it was really beautiful to see. And I, like I said, those other remedies were important to get to this point. Each one kind of clears the case. A well-selected remedy will clear out like the noise and the junk, and then make it very clear which remedy is actually going to have the most resonance for the child or the person. I mean, this is for all ages. Okay, so, and like, I want to really also emphasize this, the healing journey is a journey, and it is not linear. It is, oh gosh, my computer's doing something. It's not linear. So you can get better for a while, and then there can be some backpedaling. There can be some slowing down. There can be some other things that come up that you didn't even realize were still there, that you were still dealing with, or that, were an issue. So it's going back and like processing everything holistically. So, but the more you see it and the more you work with homeopathy, it becomes more predictable. So I like to do a bit of education around this for parents and tell them what to look out for, and help them not freak out when things happen. So for him, she noticed that he was bringing up things from the past. And now like I said, we're discovering how trauma affects the body and health, but we could really see in this case that things that him and his mom might have not even remembered were coming up from him. So like there was an incident where his mother she had to go on a work project. They're in a different country. So she had to come to the US for 6 weeks and do something for work. And he brought that up. And this happened a year ago. And he was like, Mom, when you had to leave, like I was really sad. And she was like, she wasn't even thinking about that. And so that was really interesting how that came up. And then he was also talking about the loss of his pet dog. And and his name was Leon. And so he had passed maybe a year ago as well. And so you could see, and he was bringing up all these things. He brought up his father's car accident and how he was so scared and worried for his father. All of these things happened a year or 2 years ago, and they were all coming up after this remedy. So I was like, you're kind of seeing these events actually impacted him much more than we even realized. And they could be a reason why his behavior was becoming the way it was becoming. And so she also noticed that even though there's still some moments where he'll say like, oh, I'm being this way, punish me, but he's overall much more self-assured. He's calmer and he's kinder and he's curious and he's able to focus more. He's able to concentrate on things, and she just feels like he's actually being himself again, which is what I like to hear when I'm working with people and with homeopathy. I want to hear that people are feeling more like themselves. That's the key. And so I chose this case for 2 reasons. One, it has the aspects of anxiety and ADD, like we talked about, maybe even some oppositional defiance, potentially. And then he had never received a diagnosis or taken medications or anything like that. And so it's not the diagnosis that we need, it's the child in front of us. It's very important to get very clear on that. And the second reason was it's just a beautiful illustration of what the healing journey can look like, and that these children can heal, not just be managed, but heal. And I've been doing this for years now, and I'm just in awe of how these like little homeopathic nanoparticles have the ability to elicit such an unfolding and such a response in someone, and how magnificently the human body and the mind is designed, and how the mind, body, and spirit are connected, and how they impact each other. And I've really learned so much about healing through this medicine. Like we learn, in school, we learn about pathology, we learn about illness, we learn about, how disease works and the physiology, and we're on Medscape and Up to Date and all those things. And I love that. And I love learning about that. But through this medicine, honestly, I feel like I get to see healing. Like I get to learn what healthy people look like. What does that actually look like? That's why I feel like I have such high standards when I work with people, because I'm like managing things and just like, this is not health. This is why I'm not a huge supplement person, because it just becomes kind of like any other medication. Like might as well just take medication, because you're just taking something, you're dependent, and you're managing it. I think we need a really multimodal approach. This is why in naturopathic medicine, we use nutrition, we use herbs, we correct deficiencies and imbalances, but we really have to look at that whole picture. And
so, Dr. Sonam, let's just, I just want to put a structure into this. So when you gave the medication, the homeopathic medication, then let's just talk about the testimony. I see this testimonial right here, right?
Yeah, so she's texting me. She was telling me, so y'all can hear from her yourself, that she's saying he had a birthday party recently. He just turned 6. And she said the party went well. He loved everything, but one thing she noticed was that several times throughout the night, he came to her unprompted and thanked her for the party. He was saying he loved the party, thank you for the bounce house, for this, and naming all these specific things that he was so thankful for. And she said he's almost never thankful. So it was very sweet.
And how much time do you take for this, from the time when you started the diagnosis and the treatment? How much time did it take for the child to settle down?
Okay, so just to be clear, I do not diagnose or treat. I am just simply making evaluations and making recommendations. And I have to say that because I'm not in Oregon where we can diagnose and treat. So I am currently in North Carolina. So I have to be very clear about that. But it's like, again, like I said, it's not the diagnosis, it's the child. So the whole case from beginning to end and all those 3 remedies, it's been 3 months.
So you still are in the process of evaluation with this child?
We're still watching because I want to see that this holds. So sometimes, like I said, with the healing journey, it might get better for a while and then everything's looking good, but then there's something else that comes up. So I really want to see, like, it should be gentle, it should be deep, and it should be long lasting, the effects of the remedy.
Sure. So he's been under your care for the last 3 months, and you've seen significant improvement using only homeopathy or any other naturopathic medicine also?
So we talked about diet. So there's always that dietary counseling, nutrition counseling. What is he eating? Food dyes are a big thing that we talk about, and sugar intake, processed food, stuff like that. His diet was okay. His GI system was okay. Like a lot of kids, they like to eat bland foods. They call it like the white diet, bread and pasta and things like that. So we talked about that, but another really big thing in this case was a lot of like parental techniques and like helping the parent be more observant and in touch with the child, and like see that this child has certain unmet needs that are creating this type of behavior. And that's what I see a lot. Like they're having, and like even with adults, we have like unmet needs. When they're not met, we start acting in different ways. So we talked about, like, for example, a lot of these children need a lot, they're used to criticism. They're always like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And it's like, they're always being criticized and they take it to heart. They're very sensitive. This one, at least, is very sensitive, takes everything personally, takes everything to heart. So we talked about a lot of positive feedback. I said, when you want to give a criticism, we're going to sandwich it in between two sincerely positive comments, like, identify their strengths, identify the things they're good at, what you like, and sandwich it in between that. So it's like a little bit of a cushion. So they're not taking it to heart all the time. So we did a lot of that. There was a lot of like positive psychology, parenting techniques just to help him feel a little bit more connected to his mother, because like now she's a single mom and he's taking on all this anger on her, and they need to have that relationship. They need to have that bond to be able to trust each other and move forward. So that was really important. And then like I said, in the second text here, she was talking about, he was thanking her for the party, helping with chores. And then twice he mentioned his father's car accident. And then he was mentioning missing the dog, Leon, and that he just wants Leon back. And so
there's a lot of emotional trauma.
Exactly. Perceived trauma. Totally. And we can think like trauma means something very severe. Trauma looks this way, but it can be, anything could be a trauma for them. We don't even realize that very mild, subtle things can really affect them and become internalized and like crystallize in their mind. And then it can start to hinder and obstruct their vital force. So we need to work with that and help them process these things a little bit better.